Where do you see the most potential for groundbreaking new investments in technology, knowing that the threat is real?
We still look at the same kind of like, okay, what are the areas that can make real big differences in consumer? We're looking at fintech, and we're looking at, what are the kinds of things that obviously telehealth or education are things that now the market may be opening a lot faster. One of the ones that's personal to me is really looking at artificial intelligence, because I've been looking at this saying, how do we help startups? How do we help the large companies catalyze the right kinds of outcomes? Because AI is going to transform like every industry. It's going to have this kind of impact of a similar kind of thing of like electricity. And one of the ones we've made several investments in at Greylock is autonomous vehicles, which is a version of AI. And once you actually have autonomous vehicles, people say, well, wait a minute, isn't that replacing jobs? And you're like, well, look, some jobs probably will get replaced, but actually, in fact, like suburbs, all the construction, all of that started happening once the invention of the automobile. And you say, well, we can now transform space and what space is being used. And like, think about like how cities get transformed. And like, for example, it's cheaper to live now because sure, I can live an hour and a half out of town, but as opposed to the exhausting driving myself in, I could be napping, I could be reading, I could be on the phone. I actually wrote an essay about this, which I posted on LinkedIn, which is to say, drinking and driving will go from dangerous, criminal, negligent, bad behavior to, maybe you have a glass of wine with your friend when you're driving home. So,
all right, I'm coming back to you on that one in a decade or two. There are so many new ways that companies can be financed today. How is deal making changing from your point of view, as someone who's doing so many deals behind the scenes in this unprecedented time?
So it is new and strange, just like we all are. Like we have been investing in entrepreneurs that we've never met, right? Where we've never gone to their offices. Like that's in Greylock's 55-year history. That's like that's a first. It helps when you're well networked and it's easy to reference check. And so you go, okay, like are these people real? And when you write them a big check and when you're cross-checking the belief and kind of like what their statement of the market looks like, and you can call experts and say, hey, does the market really work that way? So we are doing it. We're actually active and have been doing a number of early stage investments and one or two growth stage investments, and so so it's working. It is. Obviously 2020 is like the strangest year in my entire life, and it ranges obviously from the tragedies around the pandemic and the social injustice and the climate and what's going on in the environment to just like, wait, I sit in this one chair and my entire world is in the screen. Like, that's really odd. Like there's this joke that goes around. Some people really believe we live in a simulation. I'm not so much, but like maybe we are living in a simulation, and it's the video conference simulation.
So we're not living in a simulation as Elon Musk believes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I actually don't think we're in a simulation. Now, if you get to, look, we don't have a good physical theory of the universe, and you describe the universe as a computer and so forth. Okay, fine, right? But that's just kind of like two different ways of describing physical theory. But no, other than I've been giving rethinking to that theory, given how much, of the world is through this little screen.
Speaking of this little screen, work is changing dramatically. The workforce is distributed. You've got companies like Twitter and Slack saying you can work from home forever. On the other hand, I just interviewed Reid Hastings, the co-CEO of Netflix, who said if he has anything to say about it, people are going to come back to work as soon as they possibly can because he doesn't believe people can be as productive. And I wonder if you think this work from home trend is going to be a net positive for Silicon Valley or if it could backfire.
So I think it will be a net positive, but I think there will be some challenges. So I think some organizations will reset to distributed organizations and go, look, we're working well, it continues to work well. But I think Reid's fundamentally right. He's a very smart guy in business, obviously, and that there's a lot of people who need the office in order to work. We've really proven kind of like lots of creativity and kind of problem solving within the kind of the work context. And once you start having a workplace, then actually, in fact, all the studies show that there's a real impulse for everyone to be there, because who gets promoted tends to be who has FaceTime. Who gets the permission to go do the thing tends to be who's in the office seeing the people. And so that the same pressure and trend to get back to that.
Your job is to predict the future or try to predict the future. Like, where are we in a year? Are we talking about these same things? Are we out of this in 5 years? You know, what is your time horizon that you're operating with?
I think the economic impacts, I think some of the other kinds of impacts will have persistent, multi-year work through period. I think that the question about inventiveness in technology, and the technology as it applies to life, and technology as it applies to, kind of how we work, what are we doing? I think that continues to accelerate. I think, entrepreneurs will do that. People invest in it. You'll have growth stories. But I think we need to also think about how do we help bring the goodness of that to everything else, because I think that we'll be dealing with it now. Not on a deeply inside knowledge, but I listen to a lot of networks. I think that there's a high likelihood that, kind of Q1, Q2, we'll start having a scale vaccine. That will help us begin to really start trying to work to put the pieces back together and put the engine back together.